Have you ever heard of people who can feel someone else's pain from far away? In the small village of Yecapixtla, hidden deep in the mountains of Morelos, in January of 1843, twins Damián and Nauí were born, and their connection was so unusual that the locals would whisper, "These are not just children, they are mirrors of each other's souls." From the very first days of their lives, both doctors and priests kept records of strange, perfectly synchronized reactions that defied any rational explanation. Yecapixtla was shrouded in an almost permanent fog. Adobe houses stood pressed against one another, and the narrow streets carried the scent of wood smoke and damp grass. It was the kind of place where legends were born, where ordinary events could quickly turn into a mixture of fear and reverence. Catalina Moreno, the mother of the twins, often recalled how, only a few days after their birth, Damián and Nauí would react to stimuli in exactly the same way. If one began to cry, the other would repeat the same movements and facial expressions within seconds. Witnesses reported that sometimes the boys would display identical emotions while in completely different rooms, which frightened the neighbors and made them whisper about a miracle or a curse. The first documented strange event occurred in 1845. Damián fell down a staircase and suffered a small cut on his forehead. At that exact moment, Nauí, who was in the garden, suddenly screamed, clutching his head, even though he had not been physically injured. Catalina brought them to the village priest, who examined both boys and could offer no rational explanation. The old blacksmith, Juan López, who witnessed the scene, later wrote in his diary, "I saw how their souls seemed tied together by invisible threads. I do not know if this is God's mercy or a punishment." In 1848, the newspaper El Diario de México published a brief note. "In the village of Yecapixtla, there are children whose reaction to one another's pain and emotions astonishes the physicians of the capital. The phenomenon cannot be explained." Official documents from the time state that doctors were unable to measure the simultaneous physiological reactions that were being observed in both boys. By 1851, strange deaths of animals began to occur in the Moreno family courtyard. Chickens, goats, and even dogs were found dead without any visible signs of violence. The locals noted that the boys were at home during those incidents, and no one could explain how such things happened. The village priest, José Alvarez, wrote in his diary, "I saw them close their eyes at the same time, and suddenly all the lamps in the house began to tremble." This was beyond human understanding. In the 1960s, reports of mass visions began to appear. People claimed to see the twins simultaneously in different parts of the village. One farmer wrote, "I saw them by the vegetable garden, but when I stepped outside, they were already in the house. I was sober, I swear." Such accounts led many to consider the twins not just ordinary children, but a mystical phenomenon. From 1870 onward, the first traces of official government interest can be found. In the archives of the National Population Directory, there is a report that states, "The Moreno children are under observation. Their abilities to synchronize and possibly influence the minds of neighbors requires expert evaluation. A team of investigators will be dispatched to Yecapixtla." In 1871, a group of researchers led by Dr. Raul Mendoza arrived in the village. Their notes read, "The boys demonstrated an extraordinary connection. We attempted to measure their responses to different stimuli, but the results exceeded all normal parameters of human physiology." The villagers watched the doctor's work with suspicion. Rumors began to spread that the twins could influence physical objects and cause unexplained phenomena inside the house. In 1873, the first major incident took place, a fire in the village chapel. Eyewitnesses reported that the boys were inside but were unharmed. Farmer Pedro Sanchez wrote, "The flames surrounded them, yet they stood there as if inside an invisible bubble. I saw it with my own eyes and I cannot forget it."
After this event, the locals increasingly began to associate the twins with ancient myths and supernatural forces. By 1880, the rumors of the twins' mystical powers had spread throughout the region. Village elders believed the boys were incarnations of ancient gods, capable of changing the weather, healing the sick, or bringing misfortune from afar. The village children were afraid to go near the Moreno house, while adults whispered about unclean forces, though no one could explain exactly what the boys were doing. In 1890, the first mysterious disappearances occurred. 2 children vanished without a trace. The last witnesses swore they had seen the twins nearby at the time, but no one could explain how they could have been involved. These events forced the government to intervene, and in 1895, an official commission was sent to investigate. The commission's reports were classified, but fragments remain. The expedition was terminated prematurely due to the inability to explain the phenomenon. The twins left the village during the investigation. After the official expedition departed, life in Yecapixtla never returned to normal. The whispers about the twins did not stop, and new reports of strange behavior only fueled the rumors. Residents claimed they heard double footsteps echoing on empty streets at night, disembodied voices that no one could identify, and sometimes saw strange flickering lights in the old Moreno blacksmith shop. In 1900, the local farmers began to keep written accounts of these strange events. One farmer, Raul Gonzalez, wrote, "Last night I saw 2 boys playing near my house, even though they were supposed to be at the Moreno home. I could not believe my own eyes." These letters, which are preserved in the National Archive, were labeled unverifiable sources, yet they confirmed that the connection between the twins was only growing stronger as the years went by. In 1905, the diary of Dr. Raul Mendoza, who had studied the boys back in 1871, resurfaced. In his detailed entries, he wrote, "They react to each other's emotions from kilometers away. We tried to measure this effect with the simplest devices, but the results remained inexplicable. It might be a form of psychic synchronization or some unknown type of energy." By 1910, the phenomenon had expanded beyond the boundaries of the village. During a major religious celebration, the locals witnessed something extraordinary. The twins appeared in several different places at once, on the main square, in the forest behind the village, and on the riverbank. One eyewitness wrote, "I saw them in 3 different places at the same time. How is this possible? They are the same children." These events sparked a wave of gossip, and some claimed that the twins could teleport instantly, leaving no physical trace. In 1912, new medical observations began. Dr. Juan Martinez, invited by the villagers, carefully documented cases of strange physical synchronization. If one of the boys was subjected to even a mild stimulus, the other reacted instantly, sometimes even with physical pain. "I have never encountered anything like this," he wrote in his report, adding that the exact mechanism remained unknown. In 1913, the case attracted the attention of the national press for the first time. La Prensa published an article titled, "The Moreno Children Cause Mysterious Phenomena in Yecapixtla." Residents claimed to see them in multiple places at once, and some objects move without any visible cause. The article included testimonies from witnesses, but the editors noted that fact-checking was impossible. In 1915, the entire village experienced mass hallucinations. During the Feast of St. Salvador, several villagers simultaneously saw the twins take the shape of different animals and shadows. An elder recorded, "I saw them as birds in the sky, and a moment later, they were children again. People cried and screamed, trying to catch their gaze, but it was impossible." These accounts circulated in private letters and journals, though they were never published officially. By early 1915, a mysterious epidemic had spread through the village. Fever struck those living near the Moreno home, yet the twins remained perfectly healthy. The locals became afraid to approach the house even during the day, and at night they would avoid it completely. Priest Jose Alvarez wrote in his diary, "It seems their presence affects those around them. This is no longer coincidence. It is a phenomenon that I cannot explain." Around this time, letters and notes from journalists in Mexico City began to appear. They described objects moving on their own, sudden disappearances of animals, and bizarre weather phenomena. In a 1915 letter, one correspondent wrote, "It feels as if the entire village lives under the influence of these children. I do not know how to put into words what is happening here. By the mid-1910s, the story of the twins had become a mass phenomenon. Yecapixtla had turned into a place where the line between reality and legend blurred more and more each day. Villagers began to keep journals and record their observations, inadvertently creating an archive that would later form the basis for the official case file. The year 1915 became a turning point. The epidemic, according to local accounts, continued to rage, but its behavior near the Moreno home was particularly strange. The boys remained unharmed, and their presence, according to witnesses, seemed to intensify the phenomena. The wind would blow unnaturally, tree shadows moved without a light source, and old wooden doors creaked even when no one was inside.
In 1916, the magazine El Imparcial published a report about unexplained phenomena in the village of Yecapixtla, citing letters from residents. The correspondent wrote, "It is impossible to tell where physical reality ends and imagination begins." Locals claimed to see the boys in several places at once. Archival documents from that period include diagrams of the twins' movements and notes about synchronized reactions. By 1918, the phenomena had become even more unsettling. Witnesses claimed they saw objects inside the Moreno home move by themselves. Priest Alvarez wrote in his diary, "Tonight I heard footsteps inside an empty house, but when I entered, there was no one there. The children were standing in the garden, yet the sound came from within." These events sparked fear and gave rise to rumors of sorcery and supernatural forces. In 1919, a new researcher, Dr. Jorge Velasquez, arrived from Mexico City. Parts of his reports have survived. The Moreno children demonstrate abilities that cannot be explained by modern science. Their emotional and physical reactions remain synchronized even at great distances. The doctor noted that attempts to measure the twins' influence on those around them were fruitless, and any contact with them produced strange effects. Objects falling, sudden drops in air temperature, mysterious flashes of light. In 1920, an event occurred that the villagers still call the Night of Shadows. During the Feast of St. Salvador, several people saw the twins' elongated shadows sliding across the square, even though the real children were at home. One eyewitness wrote, "They were in 3 places at once. I saw their shadows separate and come together again as if they were playing with space." These visions only deepened the mystical aura surrounding the Moreno family. In 1922, new reports of simultaneous reactions to strong emotions were recorded. If one of the twins felt fear or anger, the other would mimic the same facial expression and body language just seconds later. Dr. Velasquez wrote in his notes, "This phenomenon surpasses the boundaries of known psychophysiology. It cannot be explained with the tools of modern science." By 1923, the first reports of collective hallucinations and possible psychic influence on the villagers were appearing. Journals of the time describe how people claimed to see the twins turning into animals or ghostly figures. Some villagers reported that their perception of time and space became distorted. Clocks would stop, objects would vanish, only to reappear somewhere else. The year 1924 was especially disturbing. A fire broke out at the Moreno home, which the locals called unnatural. Eyewitnesses claimed that the boys were inside the house but came out unharmed. The flames seemed to avoid touching them, and the smoke formed silhouettes of twins that appeared and faded away. Priest Alvarez recorded, "I saw them standing calmly in the middle of the fire. I cannot explain it. The force that emanated from them could be felt in the air." Then in August of 1925, the event occurred that marked the climax of the story. The twins left the village and were never seen again. The last witnesses claimed they simply vanished into the air, leaving behind a chilling fog and a sudden cold wind. Shortly afterward, Yecapixtla was struck by bizarre storms. Lightning bolts Struck only the old blacksmith shop where the twins had been born, and many swore they could still hear their laughter and footsteps at night. After the twins' disappearance, the villagers began to keep even more detailed records of the phenomena. Diaries, letters, and testimonies that would later become the foundation for the official case file, which was sealed and placed in the National Archive of Mexico with the warning, "Do not disclose."
Life in Yecapixtla never returned to normal. People said they heard voices in the empty streets, saw doors open and close by themselves, and spotted shadows moving inside the blacksmith shop that looked like the figures of children. Even in daylight, the walls of the adobe houses seemed to cast strange, distorted shapes. By 1926, villagers were keeping systematic records of the occurrences. An old man wrote in his journal, "Every morning we find footprints in the dirt that no one could have made. Sometimes they look like steps, sometimes like circles, as if someone had walked without touching the ground." Priest Alvarez added, "Sometimes I see them in the mist, standing by the river and near the houses, even though I know they are not physically there." In 1927, photographs taken by a local photographer surfaced in the National Archive. In the images, the twins stand side by side, but their shadows stretch in opposite directions, as if they existed in separate dimensions. Experts confirmed that the negatives had not been altered, yet the phenomenon was so incredible that many refused to believe it. In 1928, new letters from witnesses described sudden chills inside the Moreno house, objects moving on their own, and unexplained lights. One neighbor wrote, "I saw two boys standing in front of the old blacksmith shop. Their faces were calm, but their eyes seemed empty, as though they were staring straight through me." These letters were added to the secret file that authorities attempted to suppress. The following year, 1929, brought even more sightings. Several villagers saw the twins standing on the hilltop, shrouded in night fog. Their figures were almost transparent, but the feeling of being watched was so overwhelming that no one dared approach. An elder wrote, "They were watching us, but their gaze seemed to pass through our bodies. I felt as if time itself had stopped." In 1930, the last official government report appeared. "All attempts to study the phenomenon of the twins are hereby concluded. All documents are to remain restricted." At the same time, locals reported that at night they still heard laughter and footsteps in the streets, and that windows opened with no apparent cause. Some began to say that the children were guarding the village from the mist. Priest Alvarez's 1930 journal reads, "It seems their shadows are still alive. They appear in reflections in the water, in the movements of the wind, and the sounds of the night. I no longer know where reality ends and legend begins." These notes were added to the secret file stored at the National Library of Mexico, labeled "The Yecapixtla Twins, Do Not Disclose."
Even decades later, reports of strange events continued. Footsteps in empty houses, silhouettes reflected in the water, dust moving without wind. Some swore they could feel the twins' presence when walking past the old blacksmith shop. This collection of testimonies, eerie photographs, the priest's journals, and villagers' letters created an atmosphere in which it became impossible to separate truth from folklore. These materials became the backbone of the file that authorities kept hidden for decades. After 1930, all public access to documents about the twins was removed. The case file was sealed, photographs stored in the National Archive, and witnesses gradually passed away. But the legend of Damián and Nauí did not die. Yecapixtla residents kept claiming to see them in the mist, hearing double footsteps in the deserted streets, and watching objects move without explanation. By the mid-1930s, the first written report of a researcher attempting to study the residual effects of the twins' presence appeared. He wrote, "Their influence seems to persist. Even years after their disappearance, people feel they are near. In some houses, a double voice can still be heard at night, something that cannot be explained." By 1935, farmers began to notice strange circles forming in their fields, similar to the ones the twins had been said to leave behind during their childhood. Some swore they saw their silhouettes at the very edge of the light, just where shadow met the fog. The remaining elders wrote unsettling lines in their journals. "They are here, but they cannot be seen. Their eyes look right through us. It is impossible to tell where they are." By 1940, the rumors had already crossed the borders of the village. Letters from other towns and cities began to arrive, describing sightings of two children who seemed to appear and vanish in multiple places at once. One witness wrote, "I saw them standing on the riverbank and, at the same time, on the hill behind the village. They did not move, but everything around them seemed to vibrate." Some researchers began to theorize that the twins carried some form of energy or psychic resonance impossible to measure. Others claimed they were incarnations of ancient gods, capable of crossing between worlds, between dimensions. Despite the passing decades, the case file kept coming alive, fed by new testimonies. In the 1950s, villagers still said they heard laughter from the blacksmith shop at night. Children were too frightened to go near the place, and adults started leaving candles and small offerings by the doors, as if appeasing some unseen presence. Even today, no one has been able to confirm or fully disprove the alleged abilities of the twins. The photographs and journals suggest that the events were real, yet their nature remains a complete mystery. Some modern researchers who have seen the file labeled the Yecapixtla twins do not disclose claim that there are notes dated as late as the 1960s, proving that observations continued for decades after their disappearance. The legend is still alive. The village elders insist that on certain nights double footsteps can still be heard, silhouettes appear reflected in water, and objects are
seen shifting without any wind. And although there is no official confirmation, the feeling that Damián and Nauí are still present is as strong as it was in the 19th century. The case file remains locked away in the National Library. Those who have tried to study it describe something unsettling. The pages seem to shift places on their own. Some notes appear or vanish between readings. Flipping through it, it becomes impossible to separate fact from legend. And some say that at night, someone watches them from the fog, leaving a faint whisper that cannot be ignored.